PokerStatic.com. We bring you the interviews you want to hear. Now with your hosts, Bret Oliverio and Eric Bickel, the Poker Static Hot Seat.
What's up? Welcome to the Poker Static Hot Seat. Bret Oliverio, Eric Bickel, and tonight's guest, you might know him as Harrington25 on Full Tilt, Jared Bleznick. Jared, what's happening?
How's it going?
Good, good. Thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate it. You know, we were sort of talking off air, and you said you just jumped out of a mixed game session. Hope that, you know, the interview really didn't kill your action.
Yeah, no, it was just a shorthanded mixed game. It actually broke, just about 15 minutes ago.
Why don't you give people a little bit of a background, Jared, of sort of who you are and what you're all about? I mean, we know you because we're kind of like poker geeks, and we follow all the forums, and we see all the nosebleed winners and losers every day because we're sort of nerdy that way. But you kind of burst onto the scene just within the last 2 or 3 years or so. Why don't you tell people a little bit how you got started and then how you worked your way up to the big games?
I started when I was in college. I started making money, probably a couple thousand a week playing online, mostly sit and goes. And then I started moving over to cash games towards the end of my freshman year of college. And I was playing maybe, 2-4, 3-6, no limit. And the games I used to play on Bodog a lot. The games were really soft on there. And, I started moving on to other websites. Then I dropped out of school after a year. And I've just been playing, ever since. And I always wanted to get better at the game. I always wanted to, review hands and look over what I was doing. And I always said to myself, I'm going to make sure that I get good at this game, because I was a losing player for about the first, 6-7 months of me playing poker. And I dedicated my whole life to trying to beat the game itself. And honestly, I took every level one step at a time until I beat it for a certain amount of buy-ins. I took a couple shots here and there, but I never really jumped right up to the highest games. I would say for the last year I've been playing fairly big, but before that, my comfort zone was probably 10-20, 25-50, no limit, PLO, and just gone from there.
Well, those are, by the way, those are huge games too. 10, 20, 25, 50. Those games are outrageous as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a big game, and basically it's, at every level, that you're going to find some good players, you're going to find bad players, but the truth is that you have to be able to beat a stake for a certain amount of buy-ins to prove to yourself whether or not you're a good player at that stake, because you hear about guys all the time that will win 30 buy-ins in a matter of a week, and then all of a sudden the next week they lose 40 buy-ins, and then they still think they're the greatest player, but it just doesn't happen like that. People just jump up way too quickly, and I just felt like I moved along. I took each stake one step at a time.
What did you do?
I found.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What did you do that helped you along the way? Like, were you a member of the training sites? Were you? I know you're not big on the forums. I've only seen 4 posts by you on 2+2. How did you do that?
Yeah. I've never been part of a training site. I feel that the best way that I've learned poker is, through talking to people around me, friends that we talk with, that I'll talk with in terms of discussing hands, and I feel that helps the most, because, you talk to someone's opinion that you respect about the game, and they say they would have done this thing, and I did the other thing, and then all of a sudden the situation comes up the next day, and then you say to yourself, you know what, I just had this discussion with a friend of mine, and he would have called in this spot instead of raised. And I feel like that's the best way to learn the game. It's just, talking to other people and just listening to what people have to say.
Now, where exactly did you drop out of school, and how did your parents take it when you told them that that's what you wanted to do?
I dropped out of Rhode Island after my first year, and I sat down with my parents and I told them that I said, listen, you know, I want to be on my own. I want to play poker for a year and see how that goes. Obviously, when I told them that, I really had no intention of going back to school, and I just started doing really well, you know, and I just never went back.
And earlier you were talking about your bankroll management sort of mindset. What exactly were those numbers? How many buy-ins at which level? And then, you know, how exactly did you progress? What were the numbers there?
Well, it would basically be a certain amount of time that I'd have to put in, so the sample size would be there for the amount of buy-ins, but it would probably be like 30 buy-ins for the stake over, let's say, like a month or so, or maybe even 2 months. I mean, I feel like bankroll management is more important than actually being good at the game of poker. Because you know some of the best poker players in the world, and they never have money. Because if you're playing a game on 5 buy-ins, you can't have money. I mean, mathematically, you're going to go broke. So, truthfully, I mean, there's so many good poker players out there that it's the people that manage their money well that I think are going to make it in the long run. And also, obviously, playing well is very important, and playing your best at all times.
Now, you play a lot of mixed games today, right? That's kind of like your niche, PLO in particular. What did you start playing when you first came up? Was it No Limit Hold'em like everybody else?
No, I never beat the 25-50 no. I never got as high as I was never a consistent winner at 25-50 no limit. The play out there is too tough. These guys are too talented out there. I mean, you know, if you can beat that game, it's probably the toughest game online. I made my way over to PLO probably after I was beating like 10-20 no limit and 5-10. Just because mainly the PLO games were so much softer 2.5, 3 years ago.
And how?
So
go ahead, Bret.
Go ahead, Eric.
How do you find the PLO games have advanced now? Everybody, it seems, is playing PLO these days. Everybody's getting better at it. Is there still a large edge for players like yourself that excel at the game, or is the edge shrinking dramatically?
For me as a player, I don't think there's much of an edge, you know, especially like for the long term. A lot of these guys that played No Limit and moved over to PLO, they picked up the game very quickly. To be honest, all the guys at the high stakes that play PLO, they're all, for the most part, they're all good players. I mean, yeah, they do some things that are bad. You know, but for overall, they're all good players. They don't make that many mistakes. And it's really hard, you know, to play poker for a living right now. It's just that there's not as much money as there was, and the talent is just, there's so much talent out there.
How do you account for the fact that, you know, you just said you couldn't really beat the 25-50 no limit game, but, you know, when we go on to the site tonight, we'll see you sitting down at the biggest PLO game. How do you sort of account for that fact?
I mean, the Cat PLO game is it's a game that most people don't like to play, especially the top, you know, guys that play the ante game, that play deep PLO. They don't like playing Cat because it takes a lot of the skill out of the game. There's not that many decisions to be made. I feel like I have an edge in a Cat game because the Cat game is basically, it's a math game. And there's a lot of formulas that are done to figure out, you know, what hands play well against certain hands. And that's, you know, Cat PLO is not real Omaha. You know, if I sat in there in a deep PLO game with some of the best in the world, I don't think I'd fare too well.
Wow.
You know, I really don't. I mean, you know, if I see a lot of Cat games going, I'd love to play in all of them. You know, a deep PLO game, it's a lot tougher. I mean, it's a lot more decisions, and, you know, people are putting you because these guys are so aggressive at the high stakes that they really put you to a lot of tough decisions.
Right. So I get that. In other words, when you're playing these cap games, I've heard Phil Galfond blog about it and everything else. He wants to play deeper. He hates the game. So I get it that, it takes some of the skill out. You just get it in there quicker, I guess, so to speak. But what is specifically your edge, though? Just that it mitigates their edge and puts you on an even playing field? Is that what it is?
I just think I have a better understanding of starting hands and people don't understand the importance of a starting hand in Omaha. Guys like Zygmunt and Gus, they just think that they can outplay their opponents with any 4 cards in a cap game, and it's silly. I mean, you can't. You're playing a game that's a 40 big blind cap. It's really hard to outplay people that much with 40 big blinds. I mean, I don't think I have much of an edge in terms of playing, well. I just think that I counter on people's mistakes. I think that's what it is. I don't think I do anything that special.
So are those some of the guys that you like playing with at the cap games? Guys like Zygmunt and Gus, sort of the guys that, don't really have a regard for money. Not that any of you guys do at those stakes, but guys that are sort of more willing to just get it in?
I mean, if I had to say, I'd probably, in terms of a ring game, I'd love to play with Zygmunt. I just think that, the 2-4 game is too small for him, and he doesn't take it that seriously. So he doesn't really pay much attention to the game. I enjoy playing with Gus heads up if he plays. And, these guys are they're all very tough. I mean, you have to run very well to beat the game, too. I mean, luck is very important. You have to get lucky.
So do you practice table selection at all? Or do you just sit at any table?
Yeah, game selection I think is very important. I mean, if I'm sitting there playing the top players every day, there's not going to be much of, you're just going to be flipping coins for 30,000 at a time, and you're just really wasting time. So, yeah, if there's no games at all, I'll open up my game selection a little and play guys that I normally wouldn't play. But, yeah, I try to stay away from guys that I think are better than me or, as good as me. I just don't think there's any point of playing.
Yeah, and for instance, we were at Phil Galfond's place sort of taping some stuff a couple months ago, and we were trying to film him sort of playing some high-stakes action, and you were one of the only guys sitting there waiting, and he's like, I really don't like to sit down. This isn't a game I would normally jump in heads up, but I'll give it a shot. And you just politely typed, no thanks, and, sort of moved on from Phil. Is he one of those guys? And who are some of the other guys that you just really don't want to take on heads up?
I think Phil Galfond's probably the top 3, in my opinion, best players in the world. I've never played No Limit with the guy. I played PLO heads up with him. He's extremely talented. I definitely think he's one of the best. Believe it or not, I have the most trouble with Nicky Jedlicka heads up. I think he's very talented. The Ashman's very good, when he's playing well. For the cap game, this guy Loco is back from Finland. He's very good. He's a big winner on the year. I mean, there's a lot of guys. I mean,
how about the Dangs? What about the Dangs? We've gotten to know those guys, and they're playing a lot of those nosebleed PLO games.
Yeah, I play with You're in Danger probably more than anyone at these games. I think that he's as talented as those guys. I mean, his game is more about instincts and reads, more like, he just goes in. I know we all go on instincts, but I mean, I think he reads players as well as anyone. He really has a good sense of where he's at in every hand. I mean, he's just a very, very good poker player. He always plays his A game. You'll never see him play bad. I mean, T-Rex is, he's also very good. I would think that You're in Danger is slightly better, just because he's played more. He's got more experience in the game. But T-Rex is also a very good player.
I'm curious as to, you're not a member of a training site. You don't really post on any of the forums. You kind of discuss hands with your friends, but most guys...
He doesn't listen to poker podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely kind of out there on your own, and I respect that. But are you into, like, Hold'em Manager? Do you review your hands a lot? Do you go through, like, hand equity? Do you have programs where you do all of that? What kind of homework away from the table do you do?
I have never played a single hand with a poker tracker or a Hold'em Manager or any of this software. I feel that for Omaha, it doesn't make your game worse, I think, but I think some of the numbers are like deceiving. I don't think that everything is exactly what it comes out to. I mean, I know that for the all-in equity, it only shows when you're actually all in. So if you put, like, let's say $25,000 into a pot and you have like 1,000 left, where you're a huge favorite when you put all the money in, and then you put the last 1,000 in, it only shows when you put the last of the money in.
Right.
So it's not 100% accurate. It's somewhat accurate, but also I just think that poker is more of a game where you have to feel out the situation in every game that you're playing in, and there's no software that's going to show you that, like, at this given time, this guy's he's on tilt, so I have to look at my numbers and see if I should fold this hand or if I should raise or call. I don't really believe in that much. I mean, it helps to see if you're running good or running bad for the most part, but other than that, I don't think it's that much help for Omaha. For Hold'em, I think it's more of a help for, like, no-limit Hold'em tournaments. But like I said, I don't use that software. I don't really see that it's that helpful.
Well, that's interesting because, obviously people are divided on it. I know Durr, arguably one of the top 3 greatest players in the world right now. He doesn't really use a HUD, or as far as we know. But we just interviewed Jungle Man, who he's in the middle of this challenge with, and Jungle Man thinks it's imperative. In fact, he doesn't think he could be beaten by somebody if they're not using a HUD. Now, that's No Limit Hold'em, which you said you think it might be a little bit more useful. But it's interesting that you're more of an instinctive and a field-type player than necessarily numbers-oriented.
Yeah, I mean, for No Limit, I'd agree for No Limit. It's definitely very helpful. It's just Omaha is more of a game. It's more of like a flop game. Your starting hand, it's important to play good starting hands, but at the same time, you're basically playing you're No Limit. There's a lot more pre-flop situations where you're all in pre-flop and stuff like that. So it's not as important for Omaha.
Now, Jared, you said earlier that bankroll management is almost as important as just pure poker skill. And just taking a look at your numbers here from High Stakes Database, in 2008 you were down, 40,000. 2009 you were up like maybe 60,000, and then all of a sudden 2010, they have you up 2.1 million. I mean, what accounts for that just ridiculous jump? I mean, did your game just go to a whole different level? Did you sort of, find your sweet spot in the Cat PLO games? Well, what accounts for those numbers?
I think that I would say I started regularly playing these high stakes probably in March. I said to myself, I'm going to play in these games every day, and I think that as long as I think I'm a favorite in the game, and I'm going to start playing it. I think that I used to be a bit of a steamer. If I went off, I used to lose a lot. I would lose a lot of money in a day, and I wouldn't play my best. I think it's very important, that I felt that I was just comfortable at these stakes at this time. I'm 23. I just think that I can play with these guys and I can afford to. So I might as well. I'd rather play these games. Instead of taking shots, I'd rather be playing them regularly and be rolled for them than just taking a shot here and there. Because I just think, in the long run, you're not gonna really make any money. So I just decided that I think that, this is what I want to do as a poker player. As my job, I want to be playing these games, and I just want to be comfortable in them, bankroll-wise.
Now, you have a reputation.
And I have to say, though,
Go ahead.
I have to say that I've also, I've been on the right side of a lot of these all-ins, and, I've gotten very lucky at the same time, too. So it also helps.
I have to tell you, Jared,
Sure.
that you have a reputation when I was reading about you online as being sort of this aloof guy, a little different. Some people have accused you of being kind of douchebaggy, when you read some of these sites and these forums. And just from talking to you right now, you seem like a pretty humble guy, down to earth. You think that you don't necessarily have a huge skill advantage in certain games over guys, but you found a niche for yourself. What is it about you and your reputation that kind of precedes you?
Yeah, I really don't pay much attention to the forums. I see things that people say, and, I'll talk in the chat box, every now and then, like everyone does for the most part, and I'll say a couple of things that I probably shouldn't say. But I think overall, I try to be nice to the people around me, and, I try to help people out. And, I kind of laugh when I see all this stuff, all these negative things that people are saying about me. Because these are just guys, these are random people that probably have never met me, and people just love to talk, they love to say things, and I just don't, I just enjoy sitting there playing poker. I might get mad if I'm having a bad day. I might say something that I shouldn't say, but I mean, for the most part, I'm not a bad person. I try not to pay attention to the forums. I just don't think that it's that. People just don't know what they're talking about. They just say things just to say them. That's the truth. I mean, I've never really had a problem with someone in person as much as these guys. Random guys online will just start talking shit to me for no reason, and it's just, it's just inappropriate. I don't know.
Well, that's because you've made millions at online poker. I mean, let's be honest. I want to ask you about. People see your numbers. You're winning all the time. Your name's always there in high-stakes database for the biggest winners of the day. Are you caught up in the whole, lending money to people coming to you for money? You're shipping them money. Hopefully they're shipping it back. You're taking a percentage of this person and that person. Are you caught up in that, or are you mainly just playing yourself and sort of playing your game?
Yeah, that's a great question, because a lot of people, obviously that, high stakes DB, a lot of people look at the site, a lot of people they see that who's winning big, who's losing big. And it's amazing, I'll get random text messages or emails from people that, they would never email me or text me unless they knew that I was doing well and they wanted something. I mean, you get that a lot. People, will love to ask, to stake them in tournaments or cash games. And, I just try to be nice and just tell them, I'm really just not interested. And there's really not, I don't know what else to say. And it's really, sometimes, honestly, I just won't even respond, because I just feel bad saying no to the guy. If I don't respond, I feel like he gets my message, what I'm trying to tell him. But yeah, a lot of people have asked me, in the last 6 months, to take a piece of them or stake them, or, this is a great game, would you put me in the game? I stake people that I work with, that I trust, and, close friends of mine, and that's about it.
Now, one of the legendary threads, or sort of about you, that's developed in the last year or so, is the thread about you playing Bobby Ballond and PLO and you giving him an extra card. Is that true? Can you confirm that and tell us how that all went down? I find that whole thing hysterical.
Yeah, it started about almost 2 years ago. This is when I was playing 10-20 on Bodog, and Ballond, he was a pro at the time on Bodog. Mm-hmm. And I used to play with him, and, for the first 4 or 5 times, I always beat him, but it was for 4,000 here, 5,000 here. And then all of a sudden, he wouldn't play me, and I said, all right, you know what? I'll offer you 20% back on your money, to play me. So we started doing that, and I still got, I got lucky and I kept beating him. And then at the same time, I saw him in Commerce, about a year and a half ago in February. And Joe Cassidy actually mentioned the idea that because he didn't even want to play me at a percentage, because he just knew that he couldn't beat me straight up. So Joe came up with the idea that that I should just give him an extra card in PLO. And at the time, I didn't really think that there was a huge edge in giving an extra card. I mean, I knew there would be a big one, but I still thought that I had a chance of beating him. So we started playing at the Commerce. We were playing 50-100 heads up PLO. He was spotted an extra card, and we played for a long time. I mean, we played for about 8 hours, I think, and I was up on him. And I remember I just turned 22. It was my birthday, and I told him, listen, we didn't set a time limit, but I kind of felt bad about quitting him ahead, because we didn't really agree to anything. I didn't want to just leave. So I said, listen, I'm going out tonight, for my birthday. I said, I'll give you another 6 hours tomorrow. So we left. I beat him. The next day I came back. We played, and he got up on me. And then actually, the end result was that he beat me for 20,000. But what he never mentioned was the fact that we ended up playing limit hold'em after. We were playing 3 and 600 limit hold'em just because we just wanted to switch the game up. But I think that with the 5 card to 4 card, I think that I was up small on him. It was probably even, or I was up small. But he definitely beat me in limit hold'em.
Wow. Now he's a pretty decent live poker player. I mean, some would say he's pretty damn good if he was actually rolled. I mean, was his PLO game just super weak?
To be honest with you, he's not a bad PLO. He's not a bad poker player. He's a very good poker player. He actually knows how to play all the games, and he's pretty good at them. In terms of PLO, he's really not that bad. If I keep this, I actually told him, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to give you an extra card. I told him you have an edge. I realized later that it's just not in my favor. He's more. I know he's more of a mixed game player. He's very good in the draw games. He's one of the top Batugi players in the world. He's very good at triple draw. I mean, obviously he tweets about his about everything that he does in poker, and he just. Again, you can't overcome the fact that you sit down in a 200, 400 limit game with your case 20,000. It's not going to get you anywhere. And that's what he doesn't understand, or he just doesn't care. But, yeah, he is a very talented poker player.
Now,
what's your personal life like? We're sort of looking at you and your setup there. Are you living in an apartment? Now, I know you're in New York. Or are you living with some family, by yourself, with some buddies? What sort of living situation?
Yeah, I have an apartment in Gramercy. My social life is, I have a great girlfriend. It's a long-distance relationship. She lives in San Diego. I try to spend as much time with her, whether I see her or she comes here. Besides that, when I'm in New York, I'd say most of my time is spent playing poker, being around poker. I go out, from time to time, but I do love the game of poker. It's my passion. I take it as seriously as I possibly can, and I dedicate most of my time to playing. I mean, I probably put in between 70 and 80 hours a week around poker. So I really put a lot of time in.
Now, do you play any live? Do you play any live, like at the Borgata, Harrah's? Do you ever travel there to Atlantic City any?
Yeah, I used to play a lot live in the city here, in games. I don't have I'm not a great live player just because I don't really have as much patience as most of these other guys in a live game. When you're sitting there, when you're playing less hands than you would at one table online, you're playing one table in person. It's hard to adapt and, to be good at both. I also think that live and online are completely different games. The play is much weaker live, but sometimes it hurts you because you can't understand what these guys are thinking, and you outsmart yourself, and you give people too much credit, and I think that's my biggest problem live. I never go down to the casinos out here on the East Coast. To me, there's no, the games aren't that great in the casino, and I'm probably not a favorite, so I don't really, I'll go to Vegas every now and then. Like I played the big game in Bobby's room, and I actually felt more comfortable in a game like that around mostly good players, just because I have a better idea of what they're thinking and what's going on.
Who are some of the live players that you feel you have an edge on if you were to play online, but got you just in a live setting? Any of those guys that you know, like if you look at a player, maybe it's a guy like Ellie. Hey, I know I'm a better poker player than this guy, especially online, but he's tough to play against live.
Yeah, I think Ellie is probably the most underrated poker player out there. I mean, people don't give him enough credit. In the mixed games online, he's very, very. I mean, he's probably the most aggressive player in the mixed games. He's very, very good. It's funny because in No Limit, I feel like he plays the complete opposite of how he plays on high stakes. In No Limit, he's very tough to play against. I think he uses his image better than anyone in terms of the No Limit game. I think he gets a lot of calls that people, generally won't call anyone else just because of what they see of him on TV. When I was playing out in Vegas, I thought that I was very impressed with David Benjamin. I really liked his PLO game. It's tough, though. I mean, online, especially these other guys, they play a lot differently in person, too. Like Benjamin, he would do a lot more limping into pot. He'd limp a lot pre-flop, and Benjamin is one of the more aggressive players online. Pre-flop, he'd be raising and re-raising, and he just adapted to the game that we were playing in, and I thought he did a great job doing that. I mean, they're all great players. They really are, and there's truthfully, I mean, in PLO especially, you a lot of the times you just get the money in and you pray and you hope that you get lucky.
What's that dynamic like when you show up at Bobby's room and you're a younger guy and you're an online guy and you're not necessarily one of those guys, the next generation that the TV cameras are always following? What is that like when you meet a David Benjamin maybe for the first time? You've battled him for a couple years online. Now you meet him for the first time. Is it hard to even get in the room? How does that work?
I mean, to be honest, I wasn't liked in the game at all. I don't think there was anyone, just because, especially my style, I'm not as aggressive as these guys. I would say I'm much more nittier than most of these PLO players. So what they tried doing is we were playing 500 to 1,000 blinds, and originally the first time I played in it, the minimum buy-in was 70,000. And I always feel like the best way to play a PLO game with a bunch of guys that are overly aggressive is just to short buy the game, because you're just going to wait to get your money in good with aces or kings. Just get it in most of your money in pre-flop and try to double up or triple up. So what they tried doing is they tried raising the buy-in so they wouldn't let me in the game. And they've done that a couple times, because they thought that I couldn't afford it or something, which, but it was just, I don't know, they just didn't want me in the game. And I played 5 sessions in there, and I think I won 4 of the 5 sessions, and I didn't play it too long though, because once I got really deep, I quit the game because I was afraid to play deep with them. These guys have more experience than me live, and they have more experience than me playing deep PLO, and I wasn't comfortable playing in the game, sitting with $400,000 or $500,000. I knew I wasn't a favorite, and we're in a casino. It's not like a home game. I decided just to get up, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We're playing in a casino, and if I want to quit the game, if I'm not comfortable, I'm not going to play for that much money.
Now, were they giving you a hard time, like publicly, or you could just tell they were upset by their demeanor? Did they say something?
Yeah, a couple guys made some comments about me being in the game, and I wasn't, too happy about it, and I just decided that I think it was better if I just left.
Wow. And then
now, do you fire back, or do you sort of just let them talk?
No, I'll say something, but they just don't want to hear it. I mean, they just think it's all bullshit and whatever. And I just decided that I think it's better off, it's better not to say anything and just leave. If I say something, the guys they won't listen. So, I just think it's better if I just left the game.
So who are your friends in poker? Do you have any guys that play the big games with you that are your friends?
In terms of the games that I play with, I'm not friendly. I mean, I'm friendly with a couple people. I wouldn't say that I'm friends with any of the guys that play high stakes. I'd say most of my friends in poker are guys that, play mid stakes, like, 10, 20, 25, the middle game, the games, because that's what I play the most of in my career. I wouldn't say I'm friends with any of the guys that play, let's say, like 100, 200 and higher, and I try to not make any enemies either. I mean, a couple guys, people don't like me or whatever. That's fine. I mean, all I do is I just try to play my best and try to compete with these guys. That's it. I mean, the goal when you're playing poker is just to make money. You're not really here to make all these friends with guys. You're there to play poker with them.
Now, I want to go back to Bobby's room for 1 second. You buy in short, maybe you double up, you're getting your money in, and they decide to sort of raise the buy-in or, their way of sort of excluding you. Who is actually – I mean, it's kind of ballsy, I would think, to just try to change the game right as you're playing. I mean, who sort of brings that up, or do they all bring it up at once? How does that situation go down?
What happened a few times is that the game was 4 or 5 handed, and I came in, and then there's a sign that says at the Bellagio what the buy-in is for the game. So it said like a $70,000 buy-in. So that's or a $100,000 buy-in, whatever it was, and that's what I sat down with. And then all of a sudden, like Patrick, he'll bring the floor person over, and these guys play in there, they're regulars in there, so. Obviously, they're not going to value my opinion at all. I'm a guy that I'm playing in here for the first time, so they just tell the floor that, we agreed that the buy-in was higher and that they change it. So, I mean, I still played in the game, but, it's just, if they want to set these rules, then I'll do what I want to do. I mean, I think Phil Galfond was in the game too. I played with him one session, and, I mean, him and, Ivy and all these guys, they're more talented than I am, in DPLO. I've only been playing these games for the last 6 months. I'm not, and most of it's been capped. I'm not as good as those guys.
And you know what? I don't necessarily blame them because, they're there all the time. I don't blame them at all. And they're public about saying, hey, look, this is sort of a store that we like to keep open and maybe trade our money around, play as high as we can, and, hopefully a fish or two will swim up. And obviously you're not the type of guy who's going to spew a bunch of money and go in there playing like a donk, like they're sort of hoping to see.
Yeah, no, I don't really blame them. I mean, I just think that if a game says a certain amount of buy-in, I feel like I should be able to sit down with that amount of money and play in the game. No, I wouldn't blame. I mean, these guys, they obviously they get, they're more important. They're playing in the game. Yeah, you're right. I'm not like no one's dying to play with me. I mean, people like to play with me, but I don't think that, I don't bring that much to the game. I'm not like a guy that's just going to give his money away. So they're going to cater to people that are regulars in the game and guys that everyone, knows.
Now, by the same token, do you aspire to become a better deep player, or are you comfortable with your niche?
I enjoy, I enjoy my life in terms of the poker, in terms of the cat game and playing poker in a 40 big blind format. I don't think that the truth is when you're playing with a lot of good players and you're really deep, what's going to happen is you're going to play a big pot and you're just going to, one guy's going to turn over top set, the other guy's going to turn over a wrap and a flush draw, and you're going to be flipping for like 300,000. And I don't think that there's, obviously there's not much of an edge in a cap game, but at the same time, you're just doing the same thing, but you're doing it for more money in a deep game. So, no one's really bad where the sense that they're just going to stack off, extremely light, against your, no one's going to put in 150,000 with just one pair and a 10 high flush draw on like a 10-5-2 flop. I mean, they're going to have more than that. And they're probably, if it's not set over set, they're probably going to be like, a 40%, to 45% dog against your hand. So, it's, and I also think that a lot of these guys don't, they just play, a lot of these guys just love to gamble and they play over their head. I mean, I'm happy, my comfort zone is probably like, winning or losing 100,000 a day playing the cap game or, I don't want to lose $500,000 a day. I don't, it's too much money.
Right, I was going to say, what's been your biggest downswing so far? And what did you do to cope? Did you just stay away for a couple days, or did you review your hands? What'd you do?
My biggest downswing probably, it's probably 600,000-700,000 in the last, in probably 3 weeks. It's hard for me to stay away from the game. I love the game that much, and I lose confidence when I lose a lot of money. I just feel like I'm never going to win again. Like I feel like everyone has that sense and feeling that when they lose, they just feel like they're not going to win again, and they can't overcome the game, and. But honestly, if you just play well all the time, you're gonna do well and you're gonna win in the long run. I mean, when you keep getting it in as a favorite, you're not gonna lose for 6 months straight. It's not possible. I mean, you just have to play well all the time. If you play well, you're gonna get rewarded. It's that simple. Tilting's a huge part of the game. It can determine it can determine every session that you play. You play 10 sessions in a row. If you make that one really bad play that you normally wouldn't make, you can lose every session because of it. Because of that one hand. I mean, it's all about making good decisions.
Who's the biggest tilter in the nosebleed games?
Oh, it's not even a question. It's without a doubt Zygmunt. Zygmunt is one of the toughest guys I've ever played against. But I have to say that there's so much fun in playing him when he's stuck. He's definitely a guy that, I mean, especially, and he gets, he's a steamer after, like, if you beat him for a buy-in. He'll just, like, if someone's watching me, I'll be like, all right, I'll min raise, and then I'll tell my friend, I'll be like, watch, 6,000. Like, he's going to re-raise every time. He literally will re-raise every hand that, if he starts losing, he's just going to re-raise everything. And, it's good to get him when he's stuck. When he's playing his A game, he's a favorite over me. So I just try to stay away from him when he's playing well. He's a much better player than I am. He reads hands better than I do. I just have to try and get him stuck, and then maybe I can get him for a lot.
Wow.
Now I want to sort of ask you about stuff you've done with your money. Have you bought a car? Maybe you bought your chick something. I mean, I'm looking at pictures online at you at the Playboy Mansion. What are some of the cool things that sort of being a high-stakes poker player has brought to you?
I bought an apartment in Manhattan. I don't know. I don't have a driver's license. I don't drive. To tell you the truth, in terms of playing the high stakes, I mean, basically, besides money, there's no difference for someone like me than a guy that's playing 5-10 regularly. I mean, we're doing the same thing every day, basically. I'm just doing it for more money. I mean, I'm not like I don't win 100,000 and say I want to buy this, I want to buy that. I just say to myself, I want to keep playing poker and keep getting better at the game. Not too much interests me in life. I like taking vacations from time to time when I'm bored, and I like to travel, but I don't, like, I wouldn't say I spend too much money, I like to buy watches, I guess, but there's not too much.
What does your girl say? Is she sort of in awe of the money you're winning and losing, or does she ignore it? How does she react to you being a high-stakes poker player?
She's honestly, I've gotten very lucky. I've found a great girl. I wouldn't say that I'm the most normal person. You'll see people, think I'm very, I'm socially like awkward or whatever. But I try not to be. I felt that I met the right girl at the right time, and she's into me for me. Not my poker skills and the money. In terms of the numbers that I deal with, she goes on high stakes. She looks at the numbers, and she understands that it's just a long-term game. That she knows that if I can win a lot of money, that it's very easily that I can lose it all back. And she actually doesn't treat it like real money. She actually understands very well that, poker's not like a one-day thing. I mean, you do it as a job, and you try to do the best at it as possible. She's definitely, she's the greatest thing in my life right now. She's my biggest fan in terms of poker, and she's always there for me, and I really love her very much.
Oh, isn't that sweet?
Cool. Well, it is. She'll be happy to hear that, I'm sure.
Let me say this also,
all right,
Bret.
Well, listen.
Let me say this.
Okay, go ahead.
And I mentioned this earlier in the interview that, I read all these things and people have some negative opinions of Jared. I think that your weirdness or socially awkwardness deal is greatly exaggerated. I think you're totally normal, as far as I can tell. You handle yourself fine socially. You seem to have your wits about you. You're a humble guy. You know where you have an edge and where you don't. All of that other stuff is bullshit, I would say.
Well, like I said, the people that post things on the forums, they don't really know me that well. They probably met me once, on a random poker trip or something, and they don't really know what I'm about. My friends do. I spend a lot of time, with my friends, discussing poker or talking about life. And I told you, I don't really pay much attention to that kind of stuff. I just don't think it's that important. The people's opinion that I value are the people that I deal with every day. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, but here's sort of the weird thing is Jared, you don't seem to be like a huge fan of the game. You're more into studying, learning how to beat the game, and printing money, which, of course, is, it's way better than being a fan of the game.
It's actually wrong. I'm a huge fan of the game. I love the game.
Or a fan of the players, I would say it's safe to say. You don't seem to have that fanboy in you.
No, if there's no action, and I have nothing to do, I'll sit there for an hour and I'll watch, some of these games going. I find it interesting watching guys, especially when Ilsider was playing, and Durr, and watching them play No Limit, and PLO, and also I'm also trying to learn, from other players too. It also helps watching them and to see how they're playing their players, and also doing research on the game. But I love talking about the game, and I'm a huge fan of it. And I just, I just really love the game. I don't know what else to say.
Cool, man. Well, listen, you seem like a good dude, and from what I can tell, you're just a freaking cash game killer, and you're sitting at home doing what we all want to do, which is print money at your computer. So props to you, man, and thanks for doing the interview. We've had a lot of guys on, and you seem like you're a pretty good speaker. You talk well. You talk about the game well. So it's been fun.
All right. Thank you very much for having me, and you guys have a good night.
All right. Take care,
All right, take
Jared.
care, buddy. All right, that
Thank
was
you.
Jared Bleznick on the Poker Static Hot Seat. We will see you guys next week.